The sun came up slowly over the village farms, turning the fields gold and the barn roofs bright. Morning air felt cold but clean, and the smell of fresh soil moved with the wind. Carts rolled on the dirt road, and people walked toward the wide open ground near the market fence. Today was the yearly horse choosing day, and almost everyone came to watch. This day mattered to the farmers more than any other day. A good horse could change a whole year. A strong horse could pull heavy wood from the forest, carry sacks of grain, and help a family finish work before dark. A weak horse could cost a family money, time, and hope. The farmers knew this well, and they talked about it like it was law. Near the edge of the crowd stood a boy named Ari. He was young, but his face looked older than his age because life had not been gentle with him. His shirt was clean but faded, and his shoes were worn from long walks. He did not come with a proud father or loud uncles. He came alone. Ari's father had passed away when Ari was smaller. Since then, the small farm near the river had depended on Ari's hands. Some days he woke before sunrise to feed chickens and mend fences. Some nights he fell asleep with his arms sore and his thoughts heavy. He never said much about his problems, but the village could see them. Many people whispered that Ari's farm would not survive another season. The horse-choosing field was full of noise. Farmers argued about prices, tested ropes, and pointed at horses as if they were tools. A few boys ran around until their mothers pulled them back. The horses stood in a long line behind a wooden barrier. Some were tall and dark with shiny coats. Some had wide backs and strong legs, and their hooves hit the ground with a confident sound. They looked like they belonged to strong families with large lands. Ari stepped closer, but he did not rush. He walked along the line slowly, keeping his hands behind his back, like he was trying to listen with his eyes. He did not stare at the biggest muscles first. He looked at the horses' faces. He watched how they breathed. He listened to their footsteps. He noticed small things that most people ignored. A farmer named Malik noticed Ari and smiled in a hard way. Malik was known for his loud voice and quick jokes. He leaned toward another farmer and said, "That boy should be choosing a school book, not a horse." The other farmer chuckled and replied, "He will pick the wrong one and cry when the cart does not move." Ari heard the voices, but he kept walking. He stopped near a tall black horse. The animal's chest was wide, and its neck held strong. Farmers nearby nodded like they already trusted it. The seller lifted the horse's head proudly, ready to explain why it was the best. Ari watched the horse's eyes. They were sharp and restless. The horse kept shifting its weight and tugging the rope. Its ears moved quickly, and it stamped the ground as if it disliked standing still. The seller said, "This one can pull twice the usual load. It is built for hard work." Ari did not answer. He moved on. He stopped near a strong gray horse. It looked calm. Farmers whispered that this one was a safe choice. Ari watched as the horse lowered its head and chewed slowly. Its breathing was steady, and it stood with balance. It was a good horse, and Ari could tell. Still, something in Ari did not push him to claim it. He did not know why yet. He only knew he should keep looking. The crowd grew louder as more people arrived. Some men pushed forward to get closer to the best horses. A few sellers tried to call attention by clapping their hands and praising their animals. The field felt like a place where only strength mattered. Ari walked to the far end of the line where fewer people stood. Here the ground was less packed, and the noise sounded softer. A small brown horse stood alone, tied with a simple rope. It was shorter than the others and looked thin. Its coat did not shine. One of its legs had a faint old mark, like it had once been hurt. The horse's head hung low, and it did not act like it wanted anyone's attention. Most farmers did not even look at it. They saw the thin legs and dull coat, and they decided the story for it in 1 second. Weak horse, bad choice, waste of money. That was all. Ari stopped in front of the small horse. For a moment, the world felt quieter around him. Ari watched the horse carefully. It was not shaking from fear. It was not fighting the rope. It just stood there, breathing slowly. Its eyes were not wild. They were calm, almost thoughtful, like the horse was watching back. Ari reached out his hand slowly, not wanting to scare it. His fingers touched the horse's neck. The hair felt rough but warm. The horse lifted its head a little. It did not pull away. It did not press forward either. It simply accepted the touch like it understood the meaning of gentle hands. Ari noticed something that made his chest tighten. The horse's body looked thin, but the way it stood was not weak. Its feet were placed carefully, like it knew how to balance on uneven ground. When it shifted its weight, it did not stumble. It moved like an animal that had learned to be careful and smart, not loud and fast. Ari looked at its eyes again. They were quiet, but not empty. There was awareness in them. Ari had seen eyes like that before in older farm dogs, the ones that did not bark for no reason but could sense danger before anyone else. Behind Ari, someone laughed. "Look at the boy," Malik said loudly. He walked past the best horses like they were stones. Another farmer called out, "Pick a real horse, Ari. That one will fall over in the first week." Ari heard them, but he did not turn. He kept his hand on the horse's neck. The horse breathed out, and its ears moved toward Ari's voice when he whispered softly. Ari did not whisper a long speech. He only said one small word, like a promise. "Easy." The horse blinked slowly, and Ari felt a strange trust form in that quiet moment. A seller walked over, looking surprised. "You want this one?" the seller asked, as if he was sure he heard wrong. Ari nodded. "Yes. This one." The seller scratched his head. "It is not popular. People say it is weak." Ari replied, "It looks tired. Not useless." The seller looked at the horse again, then at Ari's face. "You will get laughed at," he warned. Ari said, "I have been laughed at before." The farmers around them laughed harder now. Some shook their heads like they were watching a mistake happen in front of their eyes. A few younger boys copied the laughter, trying to sound like men. Malik lifted his arms and shouted, "Ari chose the weak horse. Someone bring him a toy cart, not a real one." More laughter followed. Ari did not fight them with anger. He knew anger would only feed their jokes. He simply held the rope and stood straight. He paid the small price the seller asked. The price was low because no one wanted the horse. To the crowd, it was like Ari was buying trouble at a discount. Ari began walking away from the field toward the dirt road that led to his farm. The small brown horse followed him. Its steps were light but steady. It did not drag its feet. It did not stop to look back. It walked beside Ari like it had been waiting for someone to choose it for the right reason. As Ari reached the road, the noise behind him faded. The wind touched his face, and he looked ahead toward the river path that led home. He did not smile big, but there was a quiet strength in his expression. He knew his choice looked foolish to everyone watching. He also knew that everyone had judged the horse in one quick glance. Ari had not done that. He had watched longer. He had noticed balance, calm eyes, and careful movement. He had felt a kind of patience in the horse that matched his own. The village thought the story was already finished, because they believed strength was only muscles and size. Ari believed strength could also be something quieter. And that was why he kept walking, holding the rope, while the weak horse walked with him like a secret the world had not understood yet. The dirt road stretched ahead, narrow and quiet, with fields on both sides. The sound of the market faded behind Ari as he walked toward home. The small brown horse moved beside him, the rope loose in Ari's hand. Its steps were steady, not rushed, not slow. Each step landed with care, like the horse was thinking before moving. Ari noticed this right away. Most horses he had seen tried to lead or pull back. This one did neither. It matched his pace without being told. When the road bent near the tall grass, the horse adjusted smoothly, avoiding loose stones without stumbling. Ari watched closely but said nothing. He let the silence speak. As they walked, the path grew uneven. Rain from the night before had softened the ground. Ari slipped once, his foot sliding in the mud. Before he could fall, the horse shifted its body slightly, steadying the rope. It was a small movement, but it kept Ari on his feet. Ari stopped and looked at the horse. The horse looked back. There was no fear in its eyes. No confusion. Only calm awareness. Ari nodded slowly. "You noticed that before I did," he said softly. The horse flicked its ear as if it understood. They continued walking. Birds moved between trees near the riverbank. The air smelled fresh, and the sun climbed higher, warming Ari's shoulders. For the first time that morning, he felt less alone. By the time they reached the small wooden gate of Ari's farm, his arms were tired, but his mind felt clear. The farm was not large. A small house stood near the river, with a slanted roof and faded paint. A broken fence leaned to one side, and the barn door hung slightly open. This place had once felt heavy to Ari. It reminded him of everything he had lost and everything people said he could not keep. Today, it felt different. Today, he brought something new with him. Ari led the horse into the barn. Inside, the space was simple. Clean straw covered the ground, and sunlight slipped through cracks in the wood. Ari tied the horse gently and stepped back to observe. The horse did not panic. It lowered its head and sniffed the straw, then stood still. Ari filled a bucket with water and placed it nearby. The horse drank slowly, lifting its head between sips. Ari smiled without meaning to. This horse did nothing in a hurry. Later that afternoon, Ari began his usual chores. He fixed the loose fence, gathered eggs, and checked the small field where he grew vegetables. The horse stayed in the barn, quiet and patient. Ari glanced at it often. Each time, it stood calmly, watching him work. When the sun began to lower, Ari decided to test something. He brought out the old wooden cart that had belonged to his father. It was not heavy, but it was not light either. Many people said even this cart would be too much for the horse. Ari tied the harness carefully. He took his time, making sure nothing pinched or pulled wrong. The horse did not resist. It stood still, trusting his hands. Ari took a breath. "We will try slow," he said. He did not shout. He did not pull hard. He stepped forward. The horse stepped with him. The cart moved. The wheels creaked, but they rolled. The horse leaned forward just enough, using balance instead of force. Its legs moved in smooth rhythm, not fast, not shaky. Ari walked beside it, heart beating faster with each step. They reached the end of the yard. Ari stopped. The horse stopped. Ari turned and laughed quietly, a sound he had not made in a long time. It was not loud laughter. It was the kind that stays inside the chest. Over the next few days, Ari worked with the horse every morning and evening. He did not push it to pull heavy loads. He taught it to turn gently, to stop when asked, to listen to small signals. The horse learned quickly. Faster than Ari expected. What surprised him most was how the horse handled the hard parts of the land. Near the river, the ground dipped and rose sharply. Other horses often struggled there. This horse adjusted its steps, shifting weight with care. It did not rush downhill or freeze on slopes. It trusted the ground and its own balance. One afternoon, a neighbor named Rafi walked by and stopped to watch. Rafi had been at the market on horse choosing day. He had laughed with the others. He crossed his arms and said, "That horse is still standing." Ari smiled politely. "Yes." Rafi watched as the horse pulled the cart slowly across the uneven ground. "It moves carefully," Rafi admitted. Ari replied, "It learned that before it came to me." Rafi said nothing for a moment. Then he nodded and walked away. Word began to travel, quiet at first. People noticed that Ari's cart moved more often now. They noticed his fields looked cleaner. They noticed he was less tired at the end of the day. One evening, Malik passed by on his way home. He stopped and stared. Ari was guiding the horse along the river path with a small load of wood. The horse moved steady and calm, even near the water where other horses often grew nervous. Malik frowned. He did not laugh this time. Ari saw him but did not wave. He focused on the path ahead. That night, Ari sat outside his house, watching the sky change colors. The horse stood nearby, chewing hay. Crickets sang softly, and the river reflected the fading light. Ari thought about the market day, about the laughter, about how everyone saw only thin legs and dull hair. He thought about how the horse had steadied him on the muddy road, how it listened without being forced, how it worked with him, not against him. Ari understood something important. The horse had not been weak. It had been careful. It had learned to survive without attention, without praise, without easy paths. While other horses relied on strength alone, this one relied on awareness. Ari looked at the horse and said quietly, "They did not see you." The horse lifted its head and looked back, calm and present. Ari smiled again. The village still believed the story was simple. Weak horse, foolish boy. But every step on the road, every steady pull of the cart, was slowly changing that story. And soon, the farmers would see that what looked weak at first was something far stronger than they had ever imagined. The weeks passed, and the land changed color. Green fields grew thicker, and the river ran faster after the rains. Ari woke before sunrise every day. His routine stayed simple, but his work became smoother. The small brown horse was now part of every morning, waiting calmly near the barn door. Ari named the horse Nilo. The name felt right because it sounded quiet and steady, just like the horse itself. When Ari said the name, Nilo lifted his head and stepped closer. He did not need shouting or sharp pulls. He listened to tone and movement. Each day, Ari asked a little more from Nilo. Not heavier loads, but longer paths. They walked through narrow trails between trees, across soft river ground, and up slow slopes. Nilo moved with care, testing each step before placing his weight. Ari learned to trust this rhythm. One morning, clouds gathered early. The air felt heavy, and the birds were silent. Ari had planned to carry wood from the far side of the hill. Many farmers avoided that path when rain threatened because the slope became slippery. Ari hesitated. He looked at the dark sky, then at Nilo. Nilo stood quietly, ears alert, eyes focused on the path ahead. Ari nodded. "Slow," he said. They started the climb. The ground was damp, and mud clung to Ari's shoes. The cart felt heavier as they moved upward. Ari stayed close to Nilo, guiding gently. Nilo leaned forward, not with force, but with balance. His hooves pressed carefully into the earth. Halfway up the hill, the rain began. Not hard, but steady. Ari's heart beat faster. He remembered how other horses had slipped here before. He was ready to stop, but Nilo did not panic. Nilo slowed his steps, adjusting his body, keeping the cart steady. Ari followed his lead. They reached the top without trouble. Ari let out a long breath he did not realize he was holding. He placed his hand on Nilo's neck, feeling warmth beneath the damp hair. "You know this land," Ari said softly. Nilo stood still, rain falling on his back, calm as ever. That afternoon, Ari met trouble of another kind. A farmer named Sammy arrived at the farm with a worried look. Sammy was older and owned land near the river bend. His voice shook as he spoke. "My cart is stuck near the bend," Sammy said. "The ground gave way. My horse will not move. I need help." Ari knew that area. The soil there was loose, and water ran beneath the surface. It was dangerous for large horses that relied on strength instead of care. Ari did not answer right away. He looked at Nilo. Nilo stood quietly, but his ears moved toward Sammy's voice. Ari said, "We can try." They walked together to the river bend. Sammy's large horse stood tense, pulling at the harness. The cart was tilted, one wheel sunk deep into soft ground. Sammy pulled hard on the rope. "Move," he shouted. The horse resisted, muscles tight. Ari stepped closer and said, "Stop pulling." Sammy looked at him in surprise. "What else should I do?" Ari said. "Let him calm first." Ari approached Nilo and spoke softly. He guided Nilo closer to the cart, keeping distance. Nilo watched the ground, placing his feet carefully. He did not rush. Ari tied Nilo to the cart from a side angle, not straight ahead. He adjusted the rope slowly. "Slow pull," Ari said. Nilo leaned slightly, shifting weight instead of dragging. The cart moved a little. Ari stopped him. Again, Nilo pulled, careful and controlled. The wheel rose from the mud. On the third try, the cart came free. Sammy stared, speechless. "That horse," Sammy said quietly, "is not weak." Ari smiled gently. "He knows how to listen." Word spread faster after that day. Farmers began stopping near Ari's land, watching from a distance. They saw Nilo move through places where stronger horses struggled. They noticed how Ari never shouted or struck, yet the horse responded better than most. Some farmers felt uneasy. Others felt curious. Malik came again one evening. He stood near the fence, silent. Ari was guiding Nilo along the narrow ridge near the field. Nilo moved without fear, balancing easily. Malik cleared his throat. "You trained him well." Ari shook his head. He already knew. Malik frowned, confused by the answer. As harvest season approached, the village prepared for the long work ahead. Heavy loads would be moved. Roads would break under weight. Many farmers depended on strength and speed to finish on time. One day, the village leader announced a task. A large supply of grain needed to be moved from the river storehouse before rain damaged it. The path was narrow and uneven. Only careful movement would succeed. Many strong horses had already failed to move heavy carts through that path without slipping. Ari listened quietly as people argued. Someone laughed and said, "We know who will fail first." Others chuckled, glancing toward Ari. Ari did not speak. That night, Ari sat by the barn, watching Nilo eat. The air was cool, and the stars were bright. Ari felt calm, but he also felt the weight of what was coming. He knew the village would soon see the truth. Not because he wanted to prove them wrong, but because the work demanded more than muscle. It demanded trust. It demanded awareness. And Nilo had that. As Ari closed the barn door, he rested his hand on the wood and whispered, "Tomorrow will be long." Nilo lifted his head and looked at him, steady and ready. The weak horse was about to carry a weight no one expected. Morning arrived with thick clouds hanging low over the village. The air felt heavy, and the smell of rain stayed close to the ground. Farmers gathered near the river storehouse, their voices tense. The grain inside needed to be moved before the rain soaked the road and ruined everything. Large carts stood ready. Strong horses stamped the ground, their muscles tight. Some farmers argued about which path to take. Others blamed the weather. Everyone felt pressure because delay would mean loss. Ari arrived quietly with Nilo. The small brown horse walked beside him, calm as ever. Some farmers noticed and whispered. Others pretended not to see him. The village leader stepped forward. "We move the grain now," he said. "The narrow river path is the only way. The main road is already soft." A farmer pulled his tall horse forward and tried first. The cart moved a short distance, then slid sideways. The horse grew tense, pulling harder. The wheels sank deeper. "Stop," someone shouted. They unhooked the cart with effort. The grain stayed where it was. Another farmer tried. His horse was even larger. It took 3 strong pulls, then lost footing near the bend. The cart twisted, and the farmer cursed under his breath. One by one, strong horses failed. The path demanded balance and patience, not force. Malik crossed his arms and looked toward Ari. He did not laugh. His face showed doubt and worry. The village leader noticed Ari standing quietly. "Boy," he said, "you think your horse can do this?" The crowd grew silent. Some people smiled in disbelief. Ari stepped forward. "I think he can try," he said calmly. A few farmers shook their heads. One whispered, "This will end badly." Ari walked Nilo to the cart. He checked the harness slowly, tightening and loosening where needed. He did not rush. Rain began to fall lightly, tapping on wood and soil. Ari placed his hand on Nilo's neck. "Slow," he said. Nilo stepped forward. The cart moved. Not fast. Not powerful. Just steady. Ari walked beside him, guiding gently. Nilo placed each hoof with care. When the path narrowed, he adjusted his body without fear. The cart wheels rolled without slipping. The crowd watched, silent now. At the river bend, where other horses had failed, Nilo slowed further. He leaned slightly uphill, keeping balance. The cart followed his lead. Ari felt his heart beat strong, but his hands stayed calm. They passed the bend. A murmur moved through the farmers. Some stepped closer. Some held their breath. Rain fell harder. Mud clung to the wheels, but Nilo did not panic. He paused when needed. He moved when the ground felt safe. Step by step, the grain cart reached the open yard beyond the narrow path. Ari stopped. Nilo stopped. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the village leader nodded slowly. "Again," he said. They loaded another cart. This time, people made space. No one laughed. No one shouted. Ari guided Nilo back onto the path. Again, the horse moved with quiet control. Again, the cart reached safety. By the third trip, rain poured hard. The path grew worse, but Nilo stayed steady. Ari stayed close, adjusting when needed. Together, they moved grain that no one else could. Malik watched with wide eyes. He stepped forward and said quietly, "I was wrong." Ari looked at him and nodded. He did not speak. When the last cart reached safety, the village leader raised his hand. "Enough," he said. "The grain is saved." Relief washed over the crowd. Some farmers sat down, tired. Others stared at Nilo like they were seeing him for the first time. Sammy approached Ari. "You trusted him when no one else did," he said. Ari replied, "He trusted me first." The rain slowed as evening came. The clouds lifted slightly, letting soft light touch the wet ground. Farmers began to leave, quieter than before. Malik stayed behind. He walked up to Nilo and reached out slowly. Nilo watched him but did not move away. "He does not fear," Malik said. "He understands," Ari replied. Malik nodded. "I judged too fast." Ari led Nilo back toward the farm. The road felt different now. The silence behind them was not filled with laughter, but with thought. At home, Ari rubbed Nilo dry and gave him fresh hay. The horse ate calmly, tired but steady. Ari sat on the barn step, rainwater dripping from the roof. His arms ached, but his chest felt light. The village had seen what they refused to see before. Strength was not always loud. It was not always large. Sometimes, strength was quiet balance in the rain. As night fell, Ari closed the barn door and looked once more at Nilo. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, and new eyes watching. But Ari knew one thing for certain. The weak horse was no longer invisible. The next morning felt different across the village. The rain had stopped, and the ground smelled fresh and clean. Sunlight touched the roofs and fields like a quiet reward after hard work. Farmers stepped outside earlier than usual, not to argue or rush, but to think. Ari woke before dawn, as always. He stepped into the barn and found Nilo already awake, standing calmly. Ari smiled and began the morning routine. He brushed Nilo slowly, checking his legs and hooves. There were no signs of strain. Only steady breathing and calm eyes. "You did well," Ari said softly. Nilo flicked an ear and lowered his head, accepting the words without pride. As Ari walked toward the field, he noticed people watching from a distance. They did not point or laugh. Some nodded. Some whispered. Children followed their parents, asking quiet questions. Later that morning, the village leader visited Ari's farm. He was not alone. Several farmers walked behind him, including Malik and Sammy. Their faces were serious, but not harsh. The leader spoke first. "We want to talk." Ari nodded and listened. "You saved the grain," the leader said. "You saved the work of many families." Ari replied, "Nilo did." The leader looked at the horse. "You taught us something," he said. "We forgot to look closely." Malik stepped forward. "I mocked you," he said. "I judged without understanding." Ari did not smile or frown. He said, "I also judged once. I thought being alone made me weak." Malik looked surprised. Ari continued, "It made me careful." The farmers stood in silence, thinking. Sammy cleared his throat. "Some of us want your help," he said. "The river path will need careful work this season. We want to learn how you work with him." Ari hesitated. He looked at Nilo, then at the ground. Helping others meant time away from his own farm. But it also meant change. "I can show," Ari said slowly. "I cannot rush him." The leader nodded. "We will not rush." Over the following weeks, Ari worked not only on his land but beside others. He did not command. He showed. He explained how Nilo read the ground, how patience mattered more than force. Some farmers struggled to understand at first. They were used to shouting and pulling. But when they slowed down, they saw results. Carts moved without breaking. Horses calmed instead of fighting. Paths that once caused trouble became manageable. People began to talk differently about strength. Children gathered near Ari's farm in the evenings. They watched Nilo walk and listened as Ari spoke. He never gave long speeches. He told small stories about balance, about listening, about trust. One evening, a young boy asked, "Why did you choose him?" Ari replied, "Because he showed me who he was without noise." The boy nodded like it made sense. As the season moved forward, Ari's farm grew healthier. Crops stood strong. The fence was fixed. The barn felt full of life again. Ari no longer felt the weight of doubt pressing on him each morning. One afternoon, Malik returned with a small gift. It was a new rope, strong but soft. "For Nilo," Malik said. Ari accepted it with thanks. "You changed more than the work," Malik added. "You changed how we look." Ari looked at the fields. "We always had eyes," he said. "We forgot to use them." That night, Ari sat near the river with Nilo beside him. The water reflected the sky, calm and clear. Ari thought about his father, about the farm he inherited, about the laughter that once followed him. He understood something deeply now. People often feared what they did not understand. They mocked what they could not measure quickly. They trusted noise and size because it felt safe. But real strength asked for patience. Nilo stood and shifted his weight gently. Ari rested his hand on the horse's neck, feeling steady warmth. "You were never weak," Ari said quietly. Nilo breathed slowly, present and calm. As the stars appeared, the village lights flickered in the distance. Ari knew tomorrow would bring more work. But it would also bring respect, learning, and quieter minds. The boy who chose the weak horse was no longer mocked. The horse once ignored now led the way. And the village would never look at strength the same way again.